I proudly present to you the Video Store Guys.
Boom. And we are back. We
We
are.
back.
That's how it works, baby. That's how it works. I'm so glad everyone came back and joined us. So, we are the
Video store guys.
Video Store Guys. That's what I'm talking about. And this time we're doing Die Hard 2. Die
And
Hard.
basically, Die Harder. That's right. Basically, the premise of the video store guys is that one of us will give that video store counter pitch on a movie and why you should rent it. And Terp is going to let me know whether or not I did a job. And then also, we're going to break it down individually using our 10-point system. And if you want to know more about our 10-point system, go back and watch our original video. Is the Die Hard 1988 OG video where we break all that down in like the first 10 minutes. But basically, what we're looking for is together we kind of have the same kind of view. So, we don't want any woke nonsense. We don't want any agendas. We're looking at the way the movies are shot and put together. We want to make sure that the dialogue and the subtext are there. And specifically, Terp does not like it if the movies are set in LA or New York.
It's a pet peeve of mine. What can I say? It's just a pet peeve of mine.
Can't beat it.
So,
The movie that we've picked today, like you said, is what? Die Hard 2.
2, Die Harder.
Die Harder.
I'm
This is going to
reading
be
the box here. John McClane attempts to avert disaster as rogue military operative seize control of Dulles International Airport in Washington D.C. All right, there,
DC.
Mr. Video Guy. Tell me why I need to rent this video.
I will. So there's this. You've seen Die Hard, right? Okay.
Yes.
So this is basically the exact same movie, except it's outside at an airport, and yes, it's also Christmas. Yes, his wife has also been taken hostage. Almost all the same supporting actors, except for now we have Dennis Franz in the mix from NYPD Blue, and some terrorists have hacked the runway, turned off the lights, so now Holly's plane can't land, right? And McClane is waiting to pick her up. He is now an LAPD detective lieutenant. He has moved from New York. He's trying to merge his marriage. But now her plane can't land because some terrorists want a Colombian general who has landed there to be released. They don't want him to go up to the plane. They don't want anything to happen to him. So they call the military. They send in, they say they're going to call the Marines. They get some elite unit in there. But then, as a twist, it turns out military guys are in on it, and nobody will believe McClane. So it's up to him to stop them himself, doing a lot of fist fighting, a lot of explosions, and it's all in the snow. What do you say?
You know what? I'm taking it because in 1990, at that point in 1990, all sequels weren't destroyed. So Die Hard was an amazing show. I'm taking it. As you're explaining it to me, I'm cashing out and picking up popcorn, and my kids are running around, throwing whatever they can on the counter because I'm walking out because I have to see this movie.
I would agree. It's the hype is there. And by the way, when this came out, Die Hard 1 had just hit video rental shelves. So by the time Die Hard 2 is, seeing previews for it, and it's about to come out in theater, and you're seeing the previews after, when Batman came out, and you're seeing previews for Die Hard 2, and you're like, holy crap, we just had Die Hard 1 2 years ago. And, they wouldn't see another sequel for 5 years, Die Hard with a Vengeance, and then another 12 years after that. So you could say they took their time, whether you like the formula that they went with in the end with Die Hard with a Vengeance, where it was more of a buddy movie after that. All the rest of them kind of like have a buddy element to them. They changed the venue. They changed the shooting style. This would be, I believe, the last outing with Joel Silver as a producer. What he does is he takes a good script, fires the writer, and then brings in Steven D'Souza, who that's exactly what he did on the first one. And like the first one, this is also based on a novel called 58 Minutes. And it's not by the same writer, Eckhart, who wrote the first two books, The Detective, and I can't remember what the Die Hard was named. I can't remember. It was like basically like Towering Inferno. But so this was called 58 Minutes, and it's like, the plane's got 58 minutes worth of fuel. It can't land. And this is this sequence of events. They just basically inject John McClane into it. They spend $70 million. The first one, they spent 28, right? They saved a lot of money on location because they owned it. This time, I mean, it's a lot of snow machines. You can tell it's a lot on set, but they did film quite a bit of it actually out on tarmacs instead of sound stages. Another big chunk of that money is, remember I told you in the last one, it was a competing company to Industrial Light and Magic, known as ILM in the industry, did all the special effects to great avail. This time they actually paid ILM. So they had that was probably a big part of the budget. The miniatures and matte paintings are beautiful, super realistic. A couple of the more ambitious shots is that one shot of him in the ejector seat when the jet is blowing up, and also the explosion of the plane at the very end where he lights it with his Zippo. He lights jet fuel with his Zippo, by the way. And in the TBS Superstation dub, he says, "Yippee-ki-yay, Mr. Falcon." So that's the down and dirty. You tell me what you think of the movie. Give me your rating, and then I'll go through give mine.
Yeah, absolutely. So I gave 8 of 10. Okay, and number one, we have a connection to not DC, but New York or LA. So I don't care. We have a connection. I'm taking a point off.
He's an LAPD officer.
My second point I'm taking off is because we came so far from the humble, street cop to now all of a sudden John McClane is just some Navy SEAL that's doing cartwheels down moving airplanes and doing the explosion out of the cockpit. And it's just, that was the only part that just turned me off. All of a sudden now he's some superstar where before he was some humble cop.
Yeah, this is where it starts. You're right. This is the genesis of that. Absolutely.
So I give 8 of 10. And before you give your rating, I'm going to give what IMDb was 7.1 of 10. Metascore was 6.7. And Rotten Tomatoes was 69%. So,
oh wow, okay, that's right in line.
I'm a little higher than most, but yeah, I'm at 8 of 10.
I'm in my head. I'm in between two numbers, and I'm going to start talking through it, and then I'll probably come to it as soon as I finish. So, as plot wise, it's very similar. There's a little bit more of a twist element to it. Sorry if I'm spoiling a 30-year-old movie, but the big twist is the military guys are in on it, and they were brought in on purpose. Okay, that aspect is mirrored as well in the script of Die Hard with a Vengeance. Although stylistically, I think it was done really well. Let's talk about the director really quick. Rennie Harlin. This guy is literally the definition of hit or miss in Hollywood. So he doesn't even live in Hollywood. He moved to China and started doing Chinese cinema. But in his early career, he got a lot of buzz in the independent circuit. He directed a movie, I can't remember, it was like something Rosebud something with his wife at the time, girlfriend or partner Laura Dern was in it. She got an Academy Award nomination. He got some heat. So in 1990, he puts out 2 movies. He puts out Die Hard 2, Die Harder, and he also puts out Ford Fairlane, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. If you've seen Ford Fairlane, it's an absolute classic, comedic classic, starring the great and incomparable. Oh my gosh, what's his name? Oh, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. What's his name? Andrew Dice Clay.
Andrew Dice Clay.
I was losing his name there for a second. Absolutely flops at the theater, but is a huge cult classic. Die Hard actually does really well. On a budget of 70 million, they make like 240 million. So they've now made like 100 million more than the last movie, but they've also spent almost double what they spent. So from an expenditure point of view, it's like, okay, I see why they made the changes to Die Hard 3. It couldn't just be John by himself. He had to have a partner. Also, because you're bringing in Sam Jackson, who's just on fire at the end in the middle of the 90s, or at the end of the 90s, I should say. But Rennie Harlan goes on to direct Cliffhanger in 1993. Huge hit, right? John Lithgow, just like the best. I think nobody rivals John Lithgow as a villain other than, oh my gosh, he plays Red Reddington on Blacklist. James Spader. They are like right there as villains. Then also 1994 Cutthroat Island. Hugest flop of all, like of one of the all time. Like it loses $140 million. Gina Davis was Rennie Harlan's wife at the time. He puts her in the movie. Matthew Modine doesn't do anything for it. It's not great. Cult classic for me. We're gonna do all these movies. By the way, we're gonna do all of these movies in a series eventually. Because as soon as we start talking about it, I'm like, oh, Rennie Harlan, and then The Long Kiss Goodnight comes after it, and that's like one of his Goodnight. It's one of his last American releases before in the early 2000s, and he starts going to China. That also has Samuel L. Jackson and Gina Davis, a part of something that worked, a part of something that didn't work, and the synthesis of all of that, it totally works. Brian Cox as the mentor. It is Jason Bourne before Jason Bourne. It is Atomic Blonde before Atomic Blonde. We're talking decades before. So this director is in rare form taking some material from a novel and making it a Die Hard movie. And he was like a music video director before this. You know what I'm saying? Like he's got that Michael Bay eye where he sees style. And this movie, like you were saying, making John McClane a superhero is very much style over substance. The dialogue's really not there. It's not really memorable for funny. It's not quotable. So I'm losing points on that because there's no text and no subtext. But as far as the composition of its shooting, I think that ILM coming in to do the special effects is good, but also can be bad because they're a little too ambitious. I think they reached a little too far. But that's what films do, right? They reach for the brass ring. And I think overall, the most memorable parts of the movie are Dennis Franz, who ends up, from NYPD Blue, just being the same cop character in everything. Like nobody believes John McClane, and it is forgettable, except for one or two action scenes. The one scene where he walks in with the blanks and they don't believe him, and he just goes, and everybody's like, ah, and it's like that he would have been shot in the head immediately, but instead they're like, oh, it was blanks. That's the one part I really remember. So I'm going to go low. I'm going to have to go lower than I wanted to. I'm going to go 7. Give it a 7 because even though, I should give it a 6, it's worth a rewatch. And it is kind of sandwiched in between two awesome movies. And there are good performances, mostly on the villain side. We have like 3 great villains in this movie. And every single one of them puts up, a great performance, even though it's supposed to be like a scathing indictment of the Iran-Contra, blah, blah, blah. It just doesn't, that the story part plays flat, but the acting is good. Please bring me home.
No, you're exactly right. Right. And so villain number 1 is, of course, Thornburg, because he became and the first villain of all villains in Ghostbusters when when he's and forever in my mind, in my memory, and we talked about this pre-show, is the Bill Murray when he's in the mayor's office and Bill Murray says, yeah, Dickless over here decided to shut down our reactor.
Is that true?
The mayor's like, wait a minute, is that true? He's like, yes, sir. He is without a dick.
This man has no dick.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny. Still to this day, when I watch that, I laugh, and even my 10-year-old son even laughs. My 10-year-old son even thinks it's funny.
Well, yeah, of course.
I love the twist, right? I love the John Amos twist.
Yes.
When you start buying into him a little bit, because at first he's a cocksucker, and then you start buying into him a little bit, and then he turns on you again. And then I completely, I'm right there with you. I personally love the movie. It was, a lot of people say it's the beginning of killing a sequel. It was Die Hard 2.
I don't know, but it gets better after that.
It really does. It really does.
And then worse, but better first.
Yeah, better than worse. Yeah. Absolutely. I personally, I loved Die Hard too. It was
So we get John Amos as the red herring. Well, not red herring, because he's supposed to give you a false sense of security, because you're like, oh, it's John Amos. He always plays a good guy. He's a bad guy. And William Sadler just putting up a cold-blooded, like, Terminator T-1000. This, by the way, I submit to you that 1 year before Terminator 2 Judgment Day comes out, William Sadler is basically the proto template for the T-1000. Like, he's just cold, calculated, steely jawed, like, doesn't care. Like, if he's in a fight with McClane, he's not overly emotive. He's just calculating. William Sadler always plays a good villain. But he also can play like a really good guy. Like, just for instance, my mind jumps to this movie immediately. I just watched Man on a Ledge again. Kind of a crazy, weird, like out of time, non-chronological heist movie with Jamie Bell and the guy from Clash of the Titans. I swear to God, I'm better at remembering names when nobody is watching. But he was in Avatar. Goodness gracious. And Clash of the Titans. That's the big 2 movies that he's been in. Ed Harris is in it. But yeah, so Sadler plays the guy's dad. Spoiler alert for another 10-year-old movie. But he's the bellhop, and he's got, he can have like light in his eyes, and he can have charm and subtlety, but also he can just be an instrument of death. And that's why I love it. So we have 3 really good villains. One's comedic, one's a heel turn, and one is just, pure psycho. And I think that's what makes this movie watchable. It's purely for the sake of the villains against John McClane.
Totally. William Sadler, for the people that don't know, he shows his absolute range, right? In Die Hard 2, and then you have William Sadler in Shawshank Redemption, right? Two totally different ranges, and completely nails them both, right? And honestly, completely makes both of those movies, right? I'm not saying Shawshank Redemption would have been better or worse without him, but he served the part, and it was perfect. Once again, he nailed it.
Yeah, and like the next year in '91, you see him as Death in Bill and Ted's Journey. Best 3 out of 5.
About Bill and Ted, yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
I can sit here and talk about William Sadler all night.
Amen.
But that's how I go. Like, that's how we do. Like, that's what it's like being in the movie store. You know what I mean? When you're in the video store and you're talking with people about movies, you're like, oh, have you seen this? Oh, have you seen that? Oh, he was in this. Oh, and then did you hear about that? It is a cultural thing. And I hate it when people say pop culture, because it makes me think of it's like it's throwaway, pop as in like bubble gum. But pop is just meant to mean popular, and it's not necessary. Film isn't just pop culture. It really is American culture. And as much as you might not like it, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, Citizen Kane, and Dumb and Dumber are all, just to kind of build a spectrum there, are all in the American cinema tradition. They all fulfill a different role, but they all do very similar things for culture, right?
John Candy was amazing.
Exactly. And so was Orson Welles. So like, are you going to compare those two? You can't. They do different things. But to talk about American culture, especially cinema culture, especially cinema history, we do have to recognize that you have to jump back, you have to jump forward, you have to use the time frame that you're given, because we would not be talking the same about these movies in 10 more years, right? Mm-hmm. With hindsight comes, a little bit more richness, and also maybe a little bit more trepidation when you're talking about something you might like today, might not like it 10 years from now, because sensibilities change. But I think we both can agree that when we do Moonfall, it is an enduring classic that will stand the test of time and will be added to the Library of Congress. I guarantee.
Oh, Moonfall. Oh,
F the moon.
F the moon. Holy smokes. That was something else. That was
any movie with Patrick Wilson. Any movie with Patrick Wilson, I will watch. I don't care. You said Halle Berry. You say Halle Berry. I say Patrick Wilson.
Halle Berry has a special place in my heart forever. So
Well, of course.
yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. I would leave the store with, I would have Die Hard 2 in my hand, and I would be leaving with 4 other movies in my queue.
Yes, that means I
And
did my
that's
job.
the point. That's what I'm talking about.
So we are just kind of wrapping it up here. We are the Video Store Guys.
We are.
Michael Turpin. I'm Tyler Randall, and we thank you for joining us. And hopefully, see you again.
Thanks for joining us today. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time for the movie store guy.